think we're good then.
Lit. You get to see my steering wheel the whole time. That's
yeah, really professional setup there.
The aesthetic from my end is like unmatched, honestly, but what else is new? All right, let me get some brain lube going real quick.
Holding nothing back. I've got an iced coffee with grind right now, and I've got a whole cooler lined up. Got
I think I've had that once.
I've got a Blue Moon collection here. Little Cokes to chase the whiskey with. A little balance of up and downers.
You're truly ready for it. That's amazing.
I like to think so. But
I got a blue Powerade to stay hydrated.
Okay.
So who knows what we're gonna get into?
Yeah. No limits as far as I'm concerned. I've tested the waters with my content lately just to see what's too much, and apparently nothing really gets a reaction if you've got no viewers. So,
which is ideal.
The air is clear.
Yeah. I wonder who's gonna watch this.
I don't know, but I do feel like it's the podcast that was always meant to be since I launched into this enterprise. It's just been a matter of time. It took 3 years, but now finally I've got my oldest ride or die homie, Kyle KEEFE, who I've known since birth, on the podcast.
Literally, that's a wild thought.
It is, man. It's crazy. I mean, we're just talking about like how you either take it for granted, or in most cases, people might not even have those connections. But it's so like kind of grounding to like remember who you are.
Yeah, definitely. The more I think about like since the conversation we've had, I've kind of like reminisced about not just that night, but like the first night, and then also like hanging out with like I saw all these guys that like I just didn't understand at the time like the role that they were playing in my life. You know what I mean? And that, like that's the time when like those are the friendships that you base your future friendships and relationships off of. And just like how weird some of our friendships were just because of like the context of all of it.
Yeah.
So now like I like being around eclectic, like weird groups of people. But it's because like we grew up in a weird group of people, dude.
Yeah.
Weird group of people.
It's honestly something that should go on the social resume, that like if you've been around vastly different people and there was never like, you know, in public school, you kind of have a sense of cliques. Like, here's what group I belong to. Here's which ones I don't. You know, like your brother's friend isn't necessarily your friend or whatever, but we like, it was just understood that we assimilate with everyone. For anyone who doesn't know, listeners, we were homeschooled. So like our school wasn't the primary home base for friends, but you know, until like high school co-ops and stuff. But as far as church groups go, you shuffled so that you'd go from older friends to younger friends, depending which side of the group you were on.
Right.
Hey, when you moved your camera over to the steering wheel, I started getting feedback. I don't know if it's proximity to the speaker or
it's probably close to the speaker. I'll move it back. Hang on.
Okay. I like that you're just sitting roasting in your hot car for this. This is
it's 75 degrees in San Diego, so not really roasting. Yeah, and honestly, like I know that like because I have like a couple roommates that if I do it at home, not only will they like barge in and make a bunch of noise in the middle of it, but also like one of them will probably take a shower and like walk out naked or half naked in the kitchen. And then I'll be like, hey dude, like maybe don't show like your ass on the camera. Just a thought.
Yeah, you know.
One of my Twitch, when I first started streaming like consistently, so like I had like a big following. I maybe had like 70 followers and was averaging like 3 or 4 viewers a stream.
Yeah.
But my Twitch channel got banned. Someone that was like just so happened to be watching me, I guess, reported me and like clipped it. But my roommate was walking back and forth in a towel behind me, which is like, you know, like walking out without a shirt on, even if you're a dude or not having a shirt on, is like bannable by Twitch. So my account literally got banned because my roommate was walking back and forth behind my camera in a towel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a technicality.
But it's so stupid. Yeah. Dude, how do people make so much money playing video games?
Because the the economy of values is so warped right now.
Dude, that's a great topic. Like, talking about how insane, like the things that are like really valuable in our society right now, like how insane they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
Even
like,
things that are considered respectable.
I love video games. Yeah, I love video games, and I watch people on Twitch if they're really good, because it's like I was saying this last night to my sister-in-law, like, for the same reason that I would watch an NFL game, because like I understand the sport and I'm enjoying watching guys play it at a level that I can't even imagine playing it at. But then I'm really good at video games, but there's still guys that I watch. I'm like, this is the equivalent of watching like McGuire hit 70 bombs in a year.
Right.
Like, that's how good this person's skill level is, that high at what they do. But it's insane that there's so many guys that are making over $100 million doing it. That blows my mind. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, it's like an untapped economy with no ceiling.
I wonder how long it's going to take for that industry specifically to, like, for someone to be a billionaire. I wonder how many years that's going to take.
Yeah.
It's going to get there at some point. Most of the guys who stream every day are not playing competitively anymore. So it's not like they're going to tournaments and like participating in like the big prize tournaments. They're making most of their money off of subs and donos, and then on top of that, if you're really good, you get like sponsored, and then you get money from them too.
Yeah.
So I would guess Ninja makes the most money, but there's a couple guys like KEEFE probably makes a good amount of money. There's a couple guys that make a lot of money, I think, but I don't know. I would guess Ninja's the most, and he probably makes like 150 mil a year.
So what's the perfect balance?
It's hard to say though.
How do you strike the balance like that gets you subs and donors and stuff in terms of like personality versus gameplay? What is it? Is it about selling yourself, or is it about just being the best?
Both, because like there's a couple guys I watch that are really quiet dudes. Like Dakota's is a good example of that. I've been watching him for like 2 years, 3 years. He doesn't have like a crazy personality or like persona that he puts on. He doesn't even use a face cam. His gameplay is just so good that like he's worth watching. But then there's also guys like Ninja and like KEEFE who like, I don't watch Ninja really, but like he's entertaining because he's like hopped up on Adderall, dude. He's like on Adderall and G Fuel and like rages at kids, and it's like funny to watch because you're like, this kid, for me at least, if I ever watch Ninja, it's literally to be like, this dude is like such a sweaty try hard of a kid. So it depends. It's like with how much it's grown, like in the last even like 2 years, 2.5 years, really like Fortnite like blew Twitch up. And it was when like Ninja started streaming with people like Drake and like Juju Smith and like all these like famous athletes and like artists that
See, that's how once you get to that point where you are living out other people's dreams, that's when you are absolutely snowballed into paradise, because that's what people pay for. That is the number one thing, is let someone else vicariously embody your dreams, which is what I made this whole movie Caked about. Like somebody just wants to get caked by Steve Aoki so they feel like they're Steve Aoki. But I'm completely out of touch with what actually sells in terms of like I don't know. I was shocked that people wanted video on podcasts because they won't listen to podcasts, but they will watch a podcast. And then like Twitch was just like not really on my radar, but I can see why it's blowing up and how it gets to that level where you're just like it's fake money at this point. Like it's just
It's interesting for me because I like listen to podcasts on and off for like a long time. Like even when we were like back in like high school and podcasts first became a thing, I remember Tommy being like, "Hey, like you should check this podcast out," and I'd be like, "What the hell is a podcast?"
And I was like, "I don't have an iPod. How can I listen to a podcast?"
Exactly. So then like he like downloaded iTunes for me on my computer and everything, and like when I was like probably like 15, but I didn't really get into podcasts until probably like 3 years ago. And then when I worked at that golf course for a little bit, I was a greenskeeper. So I would wake up every morning, like way before the sun was out. I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'd get to work at 4:45, and I'd work from 5 until I think I was off at like 1:30 every day. But especially in the mornings when I was cutting cups on the greens, and it was such like it's like a slow and like tedious process to make sure you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So I would listen to podcasts like all day while I was.
Oh, that's the best, man. Multitasking at a mundane job. That's where you get in the zone with the podcast. That's still like I went into a depression when they took my phone away and I couldn't listen. I went from listening to like 3 full Rogans or something like that to nothing. And I thought it was like either COVID or like a girl situation. Nope. I got depressed because I wasn't listening to podcasts for 3 months.
I believe that. And I'll speak for myself, but I feel like this probably does apply for you too, because we're wired super similar. I think that for me, listening to podcasts gives me the social interaction that I need when I don't have it. Because I feel like I'm in the room, especially with like, it depends on who the guest is, I guess, but like, especially when Rogan has like comedians on. Yeah. And it's like they're his buddies, and they're just like when it's him and Tom and Bert and Ari. Like, those are my favorite episodes, because it's just them in a circle, like talking shit just like I would talk shit with like you and Ben and Dylan and Joe, and like, you know what I mean? It's
you really feel like you're there.
So you really do feel like you're there. And for me, it's like I laugh, and then like when it's over, I'm like, man, like I actually feel like I just like hung out with my friends for a couple hours.
Exactly. Yeah, I get that from any creative people, directors, writers, whatever it is. It's like I'm more there sometimes than I am with a person, because I'm one of those people who gets I really internalize the pressure to be present in a conversation. Even if I want to be there, it's still like this source of stress so I'm not fully lucid. And when I'm just listening, it's another level. It's actually feeding something that doesn't get nurtured very easily. So so yeah, that was my zone. Yeah. And just doing it too. I mean, that was an awesome exercise in like when you start podcasting, you know, especially if you're doing it with people who aren't used to being on podcasts because they're not like in the entertainment industry or something. You have to figure out what makes them interesting, even if they aren't presenting themselves as interesting.
Right.
And that was the biggest like exercise of my just interactive skills that I could possibly put myself through. It's like boot camp, man.
I believe it. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that some people are probably a lot easier to get to that point with than other. I can imagine.
Yeah, some people you just stay out of their way and they run the show.
Yeah, I know some people you've had podcasts with though that now I'm thinking about. I'm like, dude, that'd be like trying to get people to like just have a normal conversation in that atmosphere would probably be like pulling teeth.
Yeah, I end up doing a lot in post. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's tough, man. It's a challenge.
Yeah. That's funny though, because me and I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned this to you when I was out there a couple weeks ago. I think me and Chad. So Chad is my brother Casey, his wife's little brother, who's become like my best friend now. So me and him have been talking about doing a podcast because we both like have a lot of the same interests. We like love UFC or just MMA in general, and we love cooking, and we love a couple other extracurricular things as well together. So we've been talking about doing a podcast, but just haven't like actually set what we need to do is just like pick a night basically and be like, hey, this is the night we're recording our first podcast. Like, let's just do it.
When people tell me they're like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, I'm like, just do it, man. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, get to where you can put it out on a consistent schedule, but beyond that, man, you know how to do it. Just do it. It doesn't have to be
it's easy.
Studio quality.
And for something like that, like that's as easy as it is to like do this with you. Of like just being like, oh, like, that's just me talking with my friend, and we'll talk about weird stuff anyway, whether there's a camera on or not.
Right.
We'll probably try to dissect something stupid that we're not qualified to dissect anyway. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm all about shooting into the unqualified territory.
Yeah. Oh, same. It's a lot. I'm kind of an expert at that, honestly. I'm very qualified to talk about things I'm unqualified to talk about.
Armchair experts.
So, yeah.
You know what's funny? We'll go for like years without talking and then instantly reconnect because we grew up together, so we're the same.
Yeah.
But like I probably hadn't talked to you for a couple years while I was living in Lynchburg, and then you were on some podcast where the theme was basically like brothers who have depression or something like that. And
yeah.
It was funny listening to it because I was just kind of like, oh yeah, my bro.
That makes sense.
We know.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. The amount of messages I actually got from people from my dad's church.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh, we listened to your podcast, and I just love that you guys are so open about this." And I was like, "Oh, you haven't been around for like 12 years apparently. I've been talking about this for a while."
Yeah.
Like probably when I was like 18, I was like, "Oh, like I think my brain's fucked up." Like,
yeah.
And then a couple people
also,
were like, "Yeah, you should talk to someone."
Let's just acknowledge if you go straight at that, like, wow, that was so encouraging, and you're not going to acknowledge the fact that this dude is still very much in the throes of it. He's like, going on a podcast doesn't mean, and here's how I escaped the, you know what I mean? Like,
that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that, like, and I think my brothers both did a great job of that too. Like, and the whole idea of that podcast is like this dude Adam that we've all met basically through Tommy actually, and the idea of the podcast is like he wants to talk with people that grew up like we did about like their mental struggles, and then kind of tie that back to like how that kind of interacts with like how you view your faith now, which is a very interesting thing to talk and think about anyway.
Yeah.
But I think all that, like what me and both Casey and Trevor and Tommy's goal going into that was like, I think that we just need to not sugarcoat anything, and we need to make it known that like it's not like we've like had victory in this over like in our lives. Like it's just something that the three of us struggle with like legit on a daily basis. And I think that like in a way, all of the members of my family, just like I think in a way all the members of your family probably struggle with similar things of like there's always little things in the background in like our brains that are always going on and being said that are just like negative and like not productive in any way.
Yeah.
But that's just how your brain is like wired. And like
exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
I try to kind of break away from the stereotype of like, oh yeah, he got real fucked up by, you know, things that he was told or he was around or whatever. It's like, no one really did anything to me. Like, yeah, there were things that were like, yeah, I probably shouldn't tell a kid that, but like, I don't blame it on an experience necessarily. I mean, maybe like there's a kind of collective something that's not coincidental, you know, that's sort of in the water, but but it's, you know, I'm wired a certain way. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's funny trying to separate for us and for the small group of guys that we grew up around, why we have so many similar, like incredibly similar traits, but it's not like, I wouldn't say it's like a shared trauma. You know, it's in some ways we just happen to be very similar, and so it ran through the filter.
It's as simple as like we are products of our environment. Like, and I agree, like I hold no, like I don't have bitterness toward like my parents or toward like any of my friends' parents or like, because like what a waste of life that is. Like,
I know.
There was a short
People get hung up on that for way too long.
When I see it in one of my friends, I try to like say something about it, because it was an issue in my life for like 2-3 years where like I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, and it sucked because like I just didn't want to have a relationship with my dad. And it wasn't until one day he finally was just like, "Why don't you like me?" And I was like, "Oh shoot, like I wasn't expecting you to ask me that."
Wow.
But yeah, like I love my dad now. Like he's like my boy, classic Jimmy, dude. No, I'm just kidding. He'll see this, and if he sees this, he'll be like, "That's disrespectful. Sorry, Dad." Yeah. But anyway, I don't have any bitterness toward like anyone in our life. I think we're products of our environment. And I also just think like our parents all bought into like a lot of the same stuff. And like some of it was like good and healthy, and some of it wasn't. And like one of the things that wasn't healthy, like when it came to a lot of mental stuff, like I was a pretty anxious kid, and like you were too. And then like Casey,
big time.
I know he wouldn't care if I shared, like Casey, when he was probably like 15, like was diagnosed with depression. And that's when people like at least our family, first time that they kind of, I think, sort of began to take it seriously. But I think like in the environment we grew up, when someone was struggling with anxiety or depression or whatever it would be, then it was somehow related to faith. It was somehow related to like your relationship with God and like where there's things missing and where these gaps that like the devil is throwing. Like it was that kind of like
spiritual problem
attitude toward it.
Yeah.
Which is like, I still believe in like a lot of spiritual things. And like, I believe that like there definitely are like things that are going on around us that we aren't aware of like all the time. But I definitely don't think that like that's all that mental health problems are. Like,
well, and you can
like,
deal with the mental, calling it the mental,
yeah.
and thus deal with the spiritual. You don't have to treat it as somehow you can separate out the parts.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's not your work to do as a human.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So, I mean, for me, like, I think that was a big thing too. Like when I got older, probably it was when I was, I'll share most of the details. When I was 22, and you already know all this, but when I was 22, I think I was 22, I got a DUI and like, I was just a reckless human being. I was like a reckless, stupid 22-year-old kid. I got a DUI on New Year's Eve because my tail light was out like an idiot. But the process that shot my life into, it sent me in such a dark place because I lost all my freedom. And so I was super isolated and I hated myself because like the person I basically became the person that like, as like a teenage kid that we would have seen and been like, that guy sucks. Like, what a loser. Because like, I was just like partying and like being an idiot. But, I think that a lot, like for me, as dark as that period of my life was and the amount of money I had to spend like on lawyers and fees and fines and like all that stuff is insane. But the thing that came out of that, because I got in more trouble when I was on probation, they ended up sending me to this like group therapist lady that was like run by the state, but twice a week I had to go to therapy. And like some of the sessions, it would just be one-on-one and then the other sessions would be group. But like she diagnosed me with bipolar depression and was like, yeah, like you have some like real like issues. Like you should go, talk to someone. But even just like understanding like, oh, like I got diagnosed with something and I have like a real issue. And this isn't something that I just like, I'm not just like an effed up person. Like I actually have like there's something with my brain that's like not right. You know what I mean? So even just knowing that like gives you a certain level of like control over it in a way, or not control, but like a certain level of like, I guess it makes you like more comfortable and like okay with it in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how it is for me. Like when I found that out, I was like, okay, like I actually know what is causing me to like think this way about things and like why I feel like I can go from such a crazy high to a crazy low in like a moment's notice. Like that makes sense now. It's good to be able to have something to like point at and be like, okay, like I feel this way right now because of this thing in my life, this issue that like I've like had it pointed out to me. So I'm not going to react that way. Like it helps in that regard, but it doesn't make it disappear. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it's all a lot, dude.
Yeah. But, similar experience for me, man. I always knew, like actually knew from a very early age that there was something that was like different. Like that doesn't feel like me. It's like there's something else going on. Didn't have a name for it until, I guess, I don't want to breach any confidentiality, but someone else's diagnosis was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So I felt like I understood myself better through that. And then, I'm strangely untreated, but kind of always saw it as a thing that just I'd rather like live with than.
I get it. There's still like, dude, I've been told by a professional and by my friends and family for like close friends, I should say, and my family members for a while, like you should like go to therapy because it would be good for you. And for me, it's like, I feel like some of that stuff might be better uncovered actually. Like I feel like
not discovered, you're saying?
Yeah. Yes. Like, just like leave it like, or leave it covered. It shouldn't be, there's no reason to like peel back certain things in my opinion, but that's probably not a healthy take either.
It's tricky because it's not always like a diagnosis doesn't always mean like there's a specifically, like this component is here that shouldn't be here. It's all levels, man. It's all levels. Right. So like at some point you do have to accept that is you and that's a disposition that is just part of you. Because if you view it as the enemy, then you are viewing yourself kind of, you know what I mean? Like there's pros and cons either way. But whatever you're working with, you have to just find the best way to live a life with that. And I think the further you retreat into like a victim narrative, the worse it gets, which I'm not saying a diagnosis is a victim narrative at all. But
I get that. Yeah.
It's crazy to realize like things that when I was very, very little that were like the themes of major anxieties, you know, I thought it was about that. And then I started to see a pattern. It's like, oh, it actually the same sort of like panic episode type thing crops up regarding a plethora of issues. And now it's like only now do I realize like literally the whole psychological event that I associated with supernatural themes or like heaven and hell. Oh, that can actually happen with just normal adult issues too. So so realizing like it was never about what I thought it was about. It's literally just who I am. And I
literally was having a conversation last night with one of my friends who, funny enough, had just gone to like a therapist, or he like met with a therapist online. It was like the first time he had met with one. And
I still haven't popped that cherry, by the way. I'm trying to do it, but
I get it. It's such what a weird thing. Like, it's just weird that it's so, and because I'm in the same boat in a way. Like, I've had to do it before. I've been like made to do it.
Yeah, crazy how that happened.
Virginia, but like I haven't since then. And the only thing that's like keeping me from doing it is me. You know what I mean? But there's something about like what I told him last night, because he basically, the doctor said like, hey, look, like we've talked for one time, but like here's some of the things I think you like I could see like you struggling with. So he like said a couple of them, and I was like, honestly, man, I'm terrified that if I go see someone and if I really open up to them and I'm like, yeah, this is the stuff that's like going on through my brain most of the day, and like I like can't stop a lot of it, like just like the thought processes about things. I'd be afraid that a psychiatrist or a therapist would look at me and be like, oh, you are schizophrenic, or that like you are bipolar or something like that. And I'll be like, and then they'll be like, you should medicate yourself. And I'll be like, I don't want to medicate myself. Like I have like,
I don't either.
I have a huge anxiety with, I don't know why either, but with like any kind of pill. I just like I have no desire. I have such an addictive personality that I'm like, whether it's an antidepressant or whatever it may be, like I just don't want any part of it, because I just like feel like I will become so reliant on that thing.
Yeah. If it works, it's gonna feel too good.
Yeah, and then I also am terrified it'll rob me of like my personality too. Dude, a big reason I'm a sarcastic person is because I like am sad all the time. So it's just easier to like make stupid jokes and poke fun and like make people laugh than it is to talk about
my personality. And I guess this is what you're saying too. My personality is inextricable from the disorder.
Right. Or it seems like it is, at least. So it's like, well, if I try
it's
to
like if I change anything, it's going to shuffle the deck and I'm going to have a whole new personality, and it's probably just going to be a really muted version of myself.
And I'll probably still have issues, and I'll freaking hate my personality too. So like, I'll just be the like undiagnosed schizo dude. That's fine. I mean, if that's what
you're not schizophrenic. Bipolar, maybe.
No, I'm not.
Schizophrenic is a whole other world.
I'm not schizophrenic.
I'm not afraid of a bipolar diagnosis. I you know what I mean? I think that one people are a little too nervous about, but
it's probably true.
It seems to be one of those things like we'll learn more about.
Yeah. It's not like if you're bipolar, like you're like an extreme case of bipolar that's like a actual psychopath.
Right.
Which I don't think I'm a psychopath. But there's definitely like the way my brain is like wired is weird for sure. There's something weird about it. But I think that's most people, honestly. So how like a diagnosis like that, like how do you truly diagnose someone with like a mental issue too?
Yeah. And how true is it if it's all
that's what I mean.
Degrees?
Yes. Because like and I'm not trying to like disrespect not trying to disrespect what people do and like because that's like, it's very necessary, especially like with just the way our world is like the last like decade. Like, it's a profession that like I admire, but it's also like what amount of training really gives you the ability to like look at someone and have a conversation with them and be like, okay, like you are like this.
Yeah.
Like,
And you know how much of the criterion comes down to self-assessment and the assessment of people around you. Literally how you answer questions about the way that this symptom has affected your relationships with others is like on a point by point basis, a criteria for whether or not you might get diagnosed as bipolar. I literally took a sample test and it came down to whether or not I said that it affected relationships with friends and family. It's like, I could answer that either way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
well, that's like a kind of a big question to ask someone to like self-evaluate. Like, how can you really know how it's affected? Because like for you and for me, like the stuff that we deal with now that we're aware of, like you were probably more self-aware of it at an earlier age. But I look back when I was even like 6, 7 years old, I was like, I was an anxious kid, dude.
Yeah.
So like, how are you going to ask a 20-something-year-old or even like a 30-year-old, do you think it's affected your, I don't know, dude, I've been this way since I was 7. So probably like,
right. Yeah, exactly. It's you now. Of course, like what you wanted me to compare with a me that did not have any of these symptoms, then yeah, it's affected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like what?
Are other people going to know that? Maybe not, because they only know me. You know, I could be dead inside, and as long as my body's walking around, they still think I'm me. So
listen, if the Caps and the Nats both playing like trash so far can affect the way that I interact with people, then certainly other things can affect the way that I interact with people.
Yeah.
Well, I've not been happy the last few days. So, yeah. I mean, anything can affect the way that you interact with people. That's it's kind of a silly question. But, yeah. I've taken some self-examinations online, and apparently I've got a lot of stuff. But taking a self-assessment on any kind of mental like thing, especially when I've taken a couple and I've been like, that kind of sounds like me sometimes. Right. So yeah, I'll say yes to that. And then at the end, it's like it's like, oh, okay. Like that's interesting.
Yeah. But
I'm at a point in my life now where like none of that's a secret to anyone.
And that feels good though, doesn't it?
It does, man. Cause like, it just like, there's a level of like self-assurance that you get from that of just being like, yeah, like I'm confident enough in myself now. Like I was such a blindly confident kid, and you can attest to that, like so blindly confident. And it wasn't until I got a little older, and honestly, like it was when I started smoking weed, like I dove headfirst into it, and it became this thing where like it was actually one of the only things in my life that actually made me think when I was in social situations about the way that people were actually perceiving me, and realizing that like, man, I should just shut my mouth like half the time and not like, I don't always have to say something. I should just shut up. And I still talk way too much, but I talk significantly less than I used to. So that's a plus. But like the whole idea that, I'm just losing my train of thought now.
The confidence.
Yes. Okay. So like there's a level of like confidence that comes from understanding that like almost being able to see your shortcomings and like, and not just like admit to them or like, and I don't want to say like embrace them, but like in a way like of, I just am not like, I don't want to pretend like I don't have those issues anymore. Cause that's like the worst thing you can do, honestly. Yep. And I think that's what we kind of did a lot as kids. It was like kind of the default mode. And I think that's just kind of like a human nature thing over like, even like being a product of our environment. Like that's just human nature to be like, no, like I'm fine.
Yeah, it's a dirty secret in the background.
There definitely is like a level of freedom and confidence that comes from it though. And like,
dude, I mean, just thinking of when we were kids and like in like junior high youth group, the therapeutic moment when your buddy would say, or you would tell your buddy like that you had this thing and you realize you both have it, this thought process or this thing. You're like, whoa, we've both been going through that this whole time. Like, it's unbelievable. Like the level of revelation, especially for a kid who has a small group of friends, life-changing.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's another one of the things, like like what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, like it's just, we take it for granted we took it for granted as kids because we just were very unaware of like how different our friend group was and like how different just like our life was than 99% of the people around us.
Yeah.
So like there's no fruit and like no point like in trying to keep those parts of your life a secret. I feel like, I don't know, like I also, for me, like I'm an extroverted person. I like something that brings me life is like meeting new people, like learning about people and like talking about things that we're both like passionate about. Like I love talking to people. But it's funny because since I've like been okay with like some of the mental issues I have, and like since I've been willing to open up and talk about it, I've had so many more conversations that actually mean something with people that I never thought I would. Like I got a message from this dude that I went to college with that I really hadn't, like I talked to him every once in a while at school, but like not a lot, like didn't know him super well. But I made a Facebook post like years ago about some of the stuff that I had been dealing with over the years, and like just like it was almost like a coming out moment of like, hey, look, like a lot of my friends were going through a lot of stuff, and it was a moment of like, hey, we're all effed up. Like all of us have issues. Like you are not the only one that has issues. So like stop telling yourself that. But yeah, dude, this kid like messaged me after that, and then again after that podcast that we recorded with that dude, he sent me a message and like we had a cool back and forth going, but it just it's like opens doors for people being like, oh man, like I had no idea that you struggled with that. Like I would not have assumed that. I think that's the one that surprised me the most, honestly, is that still people are like, really? Like you like still, and like, oh yeah, like it's like bad too. It's like as high as my personality can get, like, and like even like when I'm like having fun, and like it can get equally as low. Like no question. And if you've seen me in my really high highs, then you can probably imagine what my really low lows are like, because it's the same distance from the middle.
Exactly, man. It's you live on the extremes, and
I
think the people who are capable of having the highest highs usually also have the lowest lows, and you're only going to see one of them in most cases, depending on how you.
Honestly, I would rather be like that than be an emotionless person. I just was talking to this about the same buddy I was talking to yesterday. We were talking about like, I've had times in my life, and I feel like recently I've been in like kind of a lull like this, where, cause I lost my job right before I went back to Virginia, and was trying to like just piece a lot of things in life together, and was just like overwhelmed. And if I let my depression go unchecked for a long time, and I don't really try to actively combat it, and I just kind of live in it, if a period of time goes by that's like that, and then something big like losing my job or whatever it may be happens, I just become I become numb to everything. Like I didn't even feel sad when I got fired. I was just like, like I'm not surprised. So it's kind of like it's such a dangerous thing, but it also is like, it makes me more sad ultimately, because it's like, oh, like I don't even like feel anything right now because I just don't care. And like, that's the worst place to be when you're like indifferent. I would rather be like sad all the time than feel super indifferent about everything. You know what I mean?
I generally agree with you up to a certain threshold, but in principle, I get you.
There's a breaking point. But
I'm close to that, where maybe dull me down. Man, it's funny. Like I feel like even though we're categorically different on maybe our level of confidence in interacting with other people, but since we were little kids, I knew that when it came to the big stuff, we were thinking the same. Even before we ever talked about anything. And there's a lot of things we never talked about. I just knew. I was like, there's solidarity here. We grew up with so much of the same stuff. We had so much of the same kind of creative energy. It just felt like we're the same person where it counts.
Yeah, and we had so many weird outlets too. Like so many weird outlets. Like you were like the super creative side, and I was like the let's monetize this side. Where like while you were like making a magazine for all of us friends, that you would hand draw the whole magazine
and stick to a rigid schedule. We're putting this out every week.
And I would send you editorial pieces that you would add sometimes, but then like my grind at that same time, like I started a landscaping business and like made so much money mowing like tiny little lawns in my townhouse neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like just made bank doing that, because I was like young enough still, and I knew I was young enough still to like play up the like, I'm just a kid, like pay me $15 card. So I would like make $15 mowing like so many lawns a week, dude.
Yeah.
But like that was like my grind back then. Even like we both always had something that we were working on that was like, this is gonna be the thing.
Exactly.
Even from a young age, and we still have that mentality of like.
Oh, but and I was so ready to pick up like where you took it, because you know, like we would get in like costumes whenever we'd be playing costumes. You'd be like, hey, let's start a theater company, you know? we run with it.
Yeah.
We had the knee hockey tournaments, man, and it was when you guys came over.
We made shirts,
bro. You ready for me to blow your mind? Hold up one sec.
Do you have it still? Oh,
I found this last night at my parents' house, bro. And you can tell me if this is from one of our tournaments. A kid's size American All-Stars M. Garnier with blood stains. It is covered.
Knee hockey was savage.
Blood.
Yeah, I believe it. We would literally like burn our knees so bad that we'd get blood on your parents' carpet, and it's autographed. Dude, I wonder if my mom. I know she has her Hope chest still and has a bunch of random stuff. I wonder if she has any of my knee hockey jerseys in there. I need to ask her about that.
I can't believe I just found that, but yeah.
That's amazing, because I remember we made the All-Star jersey for like a tournament we did with Ryan and Casey, and I think even like got like John LaRose and like a couple random other kids involved.
Oh,
but
and also
we've
got the assistant captain badge, which is really an honor. You get the A when there's a two-man team. Real high up.
I apologize that I gave myself
second
captain,
best.
And in hindsight, that's a little cocky.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, it is what it is. I'm trying to remember what our team name was. I know that Casey and Ryan were the Brooklyn Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs and the Vipers.
We were the Vipers. That's right. And it was green and black. That was savage. That's right. And then they were the Bulldogs, and it was gray and red.
The last time we played, honestly, it was a few years after that, and then Ryan dislocated his knee. Because me and him, we'd been to like the orthopedic doctors multiple times because we just wrecked our knees playing knee hockey.
Yeah.
And and then he finally popped his knee out. That was it. Now he's training his kid in the way of the floor hockey.
The way of the knee hockey. Love that, dude. Wow, epic times. We also you mentioned the play thing. You wrote the play, but when we were like 4 years old, we had those Winnie the Pooh masks. They were like the paper masks, and you wrote a play called "Oh Bother, Somebody's Counterfeiting" when you were 5.
Classic. Dude,
and I remember
the trademark office and stuff like that for some weird reason.
Yes, and we performed the whole play for our parents and our siblings, and then after the fact, I asked my mom, I was like, "What's counterfeiting?" And she was like, "It's fake money," and I was like, that's weird that my friend wrote a play about
Disney
people making fake money as a 5-year-old. Like, that's fucking hilarious, honestly.
Young hustlers, bro.
So, yeah. So funny. Yeah. And I think it's like, I think both of us were like a certain level of like delusional because of how small our circle was, that like when I was like 16, I was such a blindly confident little ass because I was convinced that I was going to be a pro baseball player.
I think so.
And I wasn't even that. I was like good, but I wasn't that good.
You were good, but I think
that good.
It's easier to be delusional when like you don't have too many people calling you out. You know, and it's kind of a homeschool thing.
Well, the people that were calling you out were
confidence.
like your dad, and then your dad's friends.
We were both lucky. We had older brothers who like kind of kept us in line a little bit, but like we figured it out in the end, man. We rounded out. We got in line, more or less.
What a time to be alive.
It really is. We straddled eras, dude. I mean, people don't give enough credit, but like, because I don't think anyone even realizes it, but specifically our age, like 90 to 92, those kids have a sense of what the 80s were like and what the 2000s are like what those generations are like. And it's specifically pre-internet and post-internet better than anyone else. we are seeing a far bigger world.
And like we didn't, because of our parents, like we just didn't have real access to the internet. The only websites this is another hilarious thing. We were allowed to go on the same couple websites. And one of them was the website we would check the value of our baseball cards.
Beckett's.com.
And then we would send each other, at Beckett's. We would send each other emails of like, dude, I just got this Ripken card. It's worth $35. Like so stoked.
Big money.
But like, I think you're right. Like our age, and there's like a 3-year window there of like you're young enough that you remember like the internet like really taking over, but you also were old enough to remember. Like I remember going to the library to like do research for like school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't just hop on a computer and like go to Google and like type. Like I remember going to the library and having to read books.
Yeah.
To find stuff out.
Yeah, and it's not just like, hey, kids, back in my day it was harder kind of thing. Like it's actually a whole different world that we were living in.
Totally. It's harder to navigate.
And we know both. Like that's the thing. Like boomers we cut them some slack if they don't know how to do a young person thing. No one's cutting us slack if we haven't figured it out. So we're like way more diversified. But funny little anecdote, I remember my first time on the internet when my dad had just gotten it. And he shows me, hey, you can send a letter on the computer to anyone. What do you want to do? I said, I want to email Kyle and invite him over. And we typed out an email to your dad's email address. And I asked you if you could come over in 10 days because I didn't know how to schedule anything. So I just figured we'll just say 10 days. Kyle, please come over in 10 days. I hope to see you here. Oh, and that's another thing too. Is just like you don't have cell phones. You make plans and you're like, the person better show up.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, hope they do.
That also, just thinking about that, because I think I remember my dad being like, Kyle, come here, you got an email. And me being like, what is an email? But I also, like, that just flashed me back to, like, AIM days.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you were on it as much. I wasn't supposed to be on it, but, like, I was just a sneaky kid, so.
Yeah, Ryan, my older brother got a lot more trouble with it than I did. Yeah. So I was kind of like, that test pilot didn't go well. You're staying off the air.
I think our parents it was such a new thing that I think our parents were worried that like just randos were going to send us messages.
It's brand new, like literally a whole new world.
Yeah, but
I don't know what's going to happen.
So I get the like paranoia around it, like looking from their shoes at that time. But you look back and you're like, people will like, if a random person tried to send us like a request to even send us a message, we would have just been like, who is this? Like, I'm trying to talk to the girl that we all go to church with that we're all into. Like, that all of us are trying to talk to.
The one out of 3 we've all chosen to,
So funny, dude, yeah. But literally, like, I remember, like, spending hours, even, like, I would go hang out with the Nightons, and then I'd go home, and then me and Dylan would get on AIM and, like, talk on AIM for, like, another 2 hours.
Amazing. The whole world opened up. And I remember I told you this. I was like, back in like when we were kids and it's like we're gonna hang out, it felt like the entire universe has just opened up. I go from being my mind to this infinitude of like minds about to clash together and anything is possible right now.
It was like if we got the whole group together, if we got like each group was like, or each member was like an infinity stone. And like when we finally got the 6th guy there, it all just synced together.
That would have blown
my
mind.
So funny. Yeah, man. I think that getting back to like kind of where it started, like it's just we had so many weird outlets because of like kind of the confines we were kept within of like, oh, like this is like totally acceptable to do, but like we don't want to partake in this, or we don't want to like the stuff we would do. Like we would play like wiffle ball and like knee hockey as much as we possibly could. But there was just like, because we all played like some video games and stuff, and we're like normal kids in that way, and like all of us played sports. But like when we hung out, we actually did like fun stuff that I feel like I'll tell my friends stories about stuff we did in that shopping center, and we could walk. Me and Casey found out how to walk there because remember we found sewage tunnels that went underneath Route 7. So we like figured out how to get on the other side of Route 7 without having to cross Route 7.
It's so funny how like for all the things that we weren't allowed to do because we might get in trouble, the amount of trouble we were able to get in doing otherwise like innocuous little things that we didn't think were so big a deal.
Which I think really made our parents double down on like, this is why you're not allowed to do.
Oh man, dude, it was like an us versus them thing for a few years there.
So funny.
It's being a kid, man.
It is fun to look back at certain things and like get to like look at it through a new lens.
Yeah. Yeah, there's comedy in all of it, man. It's like we lived these lives where we could be simultaneous, like heaven and hell were neighbors. You know what I mean? Like, and it's this metaphor that was all too real, because that was like we lived in this the rapture's about to happen world. So we were like the implications of everything were literally infinite. But so like in our heads we might just feel completely fucked up, but then it's also like, oh my God, some crazy shit's about to go down.
We talked about that a little bit when we were together, about like how without even like having to, it's another thing that we just like, I like always knew like you were on the same page with me. Like wasn't even like anything directly was said to us, but like we were both convinced that like we were never going to be adults and that the rapture was going to happen before we even graduated high school.
I know.
Like, oh, I don't have to worry about
we thought that before 9/11 even happened, and then 9/11 happens, and it's like, no, 100%. Just clearly the prophecies are unfolding. Yeah. We did not plan to be adults. We did before that. We were all about being adults. And then all of a sudden, oh, that's not happening. Fuck school. As I talked about in the comedy special. But that was real, dude. Of all the things, I made up some stories, but that was real. You know?
Oh, 100%. It was real for me, too.
I even talked to your sister about that.
Yeah. I think that we all just, like, were like, oh, yeah. But also, like, I mean, that's way too deep of a subject to dive into right now. We'll be talking about this for, like, 6 hours.
I can see your sense of humor now. It's not spiteful.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
People thought it. They were excited, I guess, for some reason to die. So, whatever.
Well, not die, to be.
Yeah, but what's the difference? What's the same thing?
Well, there's no pain.
Oh, okay.
This will show you, like, it wasn't until I was probably like 12 or 13 that I really thought about what eternity was, too. And, like, it was after, like, I knew, you had thought about that a lot, and Casey thought about it a lot.
Yep.
Where it's like, oh, the idea of, like, being in heaven for eternity is literally a hell for me.
It's
like,
still hell.
Thought.
Yep.
Yeah, that thought, like, I didn't even have that thought until I was 13, and then I had that thought and was like, oh my God. Like,
bro, that thought,
why have I been,
thought literally tunneled neural pathways that cannot be undone. Like, I still can launch into this eternity mindset about anything where it feels like I've just gone on to the other side of, my life is now, I don't know.
I was more likely. It's funny because that's like where especially when we were younger, that's where one of the main differences between me and you is like, you were like 8 having thoughts like that, and I was 8, and the only thing I was thinking about was my paper football matchup that Sunday.
Oh yeah, okay, and we'll revisit that in a second. Yeah. But the funny thing is, like, within this youth group of a few kids, like it's nobody's fault that I thought the way I did. I'm just the one who happened to internalize everything as whatever adults say is true and literal. And most kids aren't. You know what I mean? But like Dylan kind of did. I think Casey kind of did. You know what I mean? Like, depending
I did to a degree, but
it's like little T trauma.
Yes, and I did sometimes, and most of the time it would just go in my ear, and I'd be like, "That's interesting," and then like be like, "I wonder what like my mom's gonna make for dinner tonight."
Yeah,
like that was like I was that.
Your subconscious knows better than to latch onto it.
Maybe, or I just like was so unaware of like when it came to like really having to think about something at that age. I think I was just kind of like, I just want to have fun. Like,
right.
That's a lot to think about.
Dude, paper football league. Yeah, we've just gotten out of a service talking about how Y2K is times, and then we go play a structured paper football tournament with prize money.
Yeah, wow. Then that thing lasted for a while. That's another thing that it just randomly popped into my head that I forgot we did. Like, we started a paper football league.
It wasn't even like this feels cool. It was just this feels right. This is just what we do.
Yeah, exactly. It was like,
fun right here.
If I'm gonna be if my family's gonna talk for another hour and a half.
Exactly.
After church is over.
We're going to be the last ones out of here anyway.
I'm playing a game. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
We're both children of the church. You're the pastor's kid. I'm an elder's kid. We both had the same pressure to represent.
It's super funny how like the difference between like East Coast church culture and especially like Southern church culture.
Yeah. And
then like Western church culture within America. It's interesting how different it is.
It is, man. It's
how many people that are from one place will like scoff at the people on the other side. They could be like, "You guys are idiots. You have no." It's just like shut up.
What is the church?
None of that
man?
matters. Literally, yeah, none of that it matters at all. So funny. But yeah, dude. So many, like, for such a small group too, of like people that were in our lives, such a eclectic group of people.
Yeah. And yet with like such weird commonalities, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But like some characters for sure. Yeah.
I don't regret it. You know, my thing is even if horrible shit had happened, I'd still be like, let's just take what we've got and run with it.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no better therapy than just reconnecting with the ones who were in it with you.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. That is like the most therapeutic for me, because there's a level of like, it's two things. There's a level of comfortability there. And then there's also just like a level of like confidence you have in that person too, where it's like, oh, I can literally tell this person anything and I won't even think twice after I say it, because like, I know this person isn't going to go like, just run their mouth about it basically. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't have that with a lot of people. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's
interesting.
Something to hang on to.
My jewel died.
Well, that's probably a wrap then. I think it did you well. Bro, great podcast.
How long did we record?
I'm about to find out. My battery's about to die, so I need to make sure I plug in this computer ASAP. I'm gonna move it over right now. But yeah, I'll probably edit it down to an hour because I don't want to be more than listen to.
I can't wait to watch you back and be like, oh, I did not remember saying that.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it was all gold.
Yeah, exactly. All right, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take care.
Let me know when the edit's up. Peace.
Will do. See ya.